Good evening, everyone. Sync connection. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 10 Days of Power BI with Chinonso Okonkwo. So, welcome once again to 10 Days of Power BI. So, as usual, we're going to start with our little checkup. So, if you can hear me, just let me know where you're joining from. So, just drop that in the chat box. Just let me know where you're joining us from. So we're going to be giving a little break for others to join as well. So we can try to carry everyone along. So let's wait for others to join. Then we're going to get into today's activities. So the time is 6:04 p.m. West African time. So I'm just going to wait for 6 minutes for others to join in as well, and we'll begin 6:10 on the dot. So 3 more minutes and we're going to begin. Let's just be patient and give room for others to join as well, and then we'll begin. All right, it's 6:10, and I think that's enough time. So without wasting much time, let's get into today's class. So yesterday was day five rather of 10 days of Power BI. Day five, we took a break to practice what we've been learning. So I gave out the data set to practice asking some basic questions and creating a simple dashboard basically to test out your data visualization skills, to test out your alignment and your use of colors and your ability to use the right charts to answer a question. Based on that note, before we go into today's class, I've been seeing a lot of dashboards online. I've been seeing a lot of dashboards online, and you guys have been putting in the work, and everyone has been trying to go back and work on the data set. So I commend that effort everyone has been working at. So I would just like to talk a bit about colors for today. Today is going to be about visualizations and reviews, and then we're going to move into introduction to DAX. So I'm going to start off with the visualizations again, just to highlight or focus more on colors. So colors colors can increase our memory, and they can attract your attention to the right information or the priority information. This capability is what makes color a very good or a very powerful tool, I think, for data visualization. So while there are many things we take into consideration when we start creating dashboards, such as the use of the space. So if you notice, when we created the dashboard, we made the background kind of a dark gray background, so we could create spaces between the charts. So while you can do this in dashboards, or you can use white space to separate charts, or you can make use of borders, color is one of the easiest things to apply. So you can easily go to your format and change the color. So color is quite easy to apply, and it's also easy to make a mistake with your colors. So using the wrong colors or using too many colors can confuse people. While I would like to say that there is no right or perfect way to use color in data visualizations, like it's still a gradual learning process. There is, we can always try to start off with using colors to create associations between what we already know. So what do I mean by using colors to create associations? So I'll try to give you an example of, let's say the green light now. So when we see green light, automatically when we see the color green, it indicates you're good to go. So when you come across business dashboards, you see the color green being used to represent profit. So that is something as human beings that we can easily associate green with the color of good things or profit. And we associate red with basically danger and okay, there's a problem here. So this is how you can employ this kind of colors in your dashboard as well. So let's talk about the dashboard we created, which is I'm going to be focusing on the stacked bar charts we create. So I'm just going to speak about these, and then I'm going to move on to the visualizations to show you what exactly I mean based on what people practice and worked on and put in their efforts. So we created a stacked bar chart. If you can remember, that was the last, I think the bottom chart we created. So this stacked bar chart used what is a diverging palette. So basically, a diverging palette is a palette that moves from a color from one color, and then hues are like different shades of the color, to then a basic color which is like white, which shows neutrality or neutral, and then moves on to another color. So basically, a diverging palette is good for showing how something goes from good to bad. Basically, how people, you can use it for people's opinion as well, how people reacted to a particular topic, how people strongly agree, they were neutral, disagree, and strongly disagree. So you basically use diverging palettes for like things that have inherent order. So when I say inherent order, I mean something that has an order with it. It's just like small, large, extra large. Like there is an order with this. It's just like strongly agree, then just agree, disagree. Or like let's use the example we use in our dashboard, which is very good, good, average, poor, and then very poor. So there is an order to these things, how we get bad. So making use of colors here, I would say, first of all, when you have a diverging palette, you can choose two colors and then you use the hues of the colors. So if you notice, so let's say we're going from ratings of people rating very good to very poor now. We could decide to use very good using a green color palette, using green color, and then very bad using red. So from the deepest shade of green to a very light to light shades of green, and then you get a white, and then you get a white neutral color, and then you move to a a shade of a shade of red rather, and then a deep shade of red. So once you have this palette, green to red, this palette will actually serve. But now this is where accessibility comes into play. Now there is this color blindness. Like there is statistics of people, 8% of people not being able to differentiate color green and color red. So once you present a chart containing these two colors like this, the information you are trying to pass across is missed. Like the information doesn't get passed across to them because they are seeing shades of, like, I think kind of like a brown color or something like that. They're seeing red and green representing the same shade of color, so they don't really understand the context in this form. So that is why when I created this chart, I tended to use a blue color, a safer color, blue which is kind of close to green, and blue still evokes like positive emotions. So I tried to use a blue color palette, and then I transitioned to a red, indicating that okay, these are the portions where the ratings were not very good. So basically what I'm saying is, you there are other color palettes you can use as well. You just need to make sure you're using a color. You can use blue to orange. You just need to make sure that you're using a color that starts off with just one color. You're using just two colors in a diverging palette, just two colors, and then shades of the colors. So if you're using blue and orange, you're going to be using a deep blue, light blue, then let's say a white or a neutral, then a light orange and a deep orange. So that is just what I want to emphasize on in this. Also, I would like to add about colors that starting out using colors, you should tend to try to play it safe. Play it safe with colors. It's not about using too many colors. Sometimes using too many colors, you end up missing the information, you end up confusing, and it's not really easy to get it well with colors all the time. So you can as well read up on the right colors to use, the contrasting colors, the right colors to use for your palette. Like I say, I'm not a very good design person as well, or designer, so I tend to also play it safe. So I think the maximum amount of colors you should be using in your dashboard to be maybe three, and maybe at most four. I just think you should play it safe with using grays or neutral. So you can use one color, and then use like the shades of the color, like a lighter shade of the color, and others as well. So now that we've discussed a little bit of visualizations like this, I'm going to show you the dashboards that I've been seeing online, and we're going to just go through them, and I'll let you know what I think about them. So I'm moving on to that. So I'm just going to show you. So we'll start off with the first dashboard we can see. So I'm going to go right from the left to right, from top to bottom. So we'll take it one step at a time, and I'll tell you what I like about the dashboard and what I think can also be improved in any dashboard that come along. So for the first dashboard, it starts off with a title, which is descriptive and HR data analysis dashboard. So it starts off with an HR analysis dashboard, basically. So the title is quite descriptive that you're analyzing the data of the employees, and then you see little drop down boxes here. I think the person decided to use a drop down, which is fine, and I like this as well. Then he provided some card visuals here to show the total number of employees being 943, the gender type being three genders, department 12, and of course the average salary. It made use of icons, and what I particularly like about the icons here is it didn't draw too much attention to the icons. It made it gray, and I think I like that. I like that. I think I commend that as well. So let's move on to the first chart then. The first chart is showing the gender distribution, which shows that there are 49% male and 47% female, or a little 4% for the non-binary gender. And then we move on to the second chart here, which shows a simple bar chart showing the average salary gotten by gender type. So this is where I would stop and I would highlight the title. Now, one thing in dashboards also, you need to come up with a title that is understandable and that is descriptive enough. So you should always try to go ahead and write a title that sounds good, that sounds like something that someone like an average person can easily understand. So when you read this, you get average of salary by gender type. This is not very descriptive. So I think what an amendment to this could be the average salary gotten by each gender type, or average salary by gender type will be okay. Just I think the of is not needed. So you can go to your title and then just edit this as well. So the average salary gotten by gender type. So that's cool. Then I move on to the last chart here, which we have a stack bar chart. So I can see the ratings: very good, good, average, poor, and very poor. So I can clearly tell the ratings. So I'm just going to point out one thing I noticed here. I noticed that this blue color is a different shade of blue. It's not exactly the same shade of blue. It's slightly different shade of blue. So what I would have liked for the person to do was to use the same shade of blues here and be consistent throughout. So that's just what I'll point out from that. And then I'll talk about the data labels here, which is 12.10%. So I would have liked to see that rounded off to like 12%. I think it would be easier for someone to be able to compare that, okay, females, the very good ratings of females, 12%, and male 8%. It's much easy to pass across information that way than with the decimal point. So that's just what I'll pick out from that. But the title ratings by gender type is okay. I think this is fine. So let's talk about the alignments rather. You can tell that this is aligned properly. You can tell that this is aligned, and this is also aligned properly as well. You can tell that this is aligned. Everything is aligned. So I commend that. I think person did a wonderful job with the alignment and the layout of this. So there's a little, I think this is where we talk about distributing horizontally. So you can tell that the space here, the white space between the total employees visual card and gender type seems a little wider than this. So this doesn't really mark this chart. This is just a basic thing that I'm just pointing out. So you can just try to select this card visual, holding your shift key, select the gender type, select the department and average salary. And Going to your align tab, your align, where you choose to align, because you can just choose to distribute horizontally. So what it's going to do is it's going to distribute even amount of space between all of these visuals. So that's what it's basically going to do for you. So apart from that, I think you did a very good job with this with just with answering some basic questions and creating this dashboard. I think that is top notch. I think well done. So let's move on to the next. So for the next, we have a fine wheel manufacturing company, and I can see the use of this is an analysis dashboard. Okay, I think this is okay. Total employees 943, the gender type, the department, and the average salary as well. I think this is okay. Now we come off to the gender distribution, and chose to use a dark brown color. I think this works well. This is fine to use. And we move on to the second chart. I see the average salary by gender type. So the average salary by gender type, I like this. I think this title works well. I think this is fine. This is fine for I think this is fine as well. So we can clearly see this. So I would just advise you to when next you want to I just guess you just wanted to share a quick snapshot of your dashboard online, but you can also try to like export it as a PDF and then convert from PDF to a JPEG so you can share your dashboards online very well. So let's move on to the ratings by gender type. So moving on to the ratings by gender type, this is where I would say the palette you're using here is not a diverging. This seems to be like should I call it it's just a sequential palette. So this is just one color. So I would have liked if you indicated from maybe a brown to a deeper shade of another color, and when it was average, you just use a white a white color for average to indicate the average is just basically kind of like just average, just neutral. So that's just what I'll say about this. So let's go up to you made use of list so you can filter by location. I think that works well. And your alignment, you got your alignment perfectly well. So well done on that. Well done on that. I can say well done on that. I think that's perfect work. So we're going to move on to the next. So moving on to the next, we get something that's similar to we get something that's similar to the last part earlier, or I think this is the same. I think this is the same chart. I think this is the same visual as well. So I'm just going to move to the next. So moving on to the next, we have a Palmorial Manufacturing Group HR data analysis, the alignment, it works fine. And then there's the use of the average salary by gender, quite descriptive, ratings by gender, okay, this is good. I love the fact that I rounded off the numbers well to 12%. So we can clearly tell by looking at this that 12% of the ratings population were rated very good, while 5% were rated very poor, compared to the 7% that were rated very poor by male population rather. We can also tell, we can see the slides here in a list format, so we can filter for department to see the average salary by gender based on, let's say, accounting department. So we can filter for this. So I love the use of filters as well to answer this question. And it got the alignment well. You can see this is clearly aligned well, and this is distributed well. So the alignment is perfect. I would just like to point out that the female, male, and non-binary, your labels are not clearly visible enough. They look to be a very small size, so you might want to pick the same font size you used here for your non-binary male and female. You might want to just use that here as well. And also, if you want to, you can turn off the borders here to a white border, but it doesn't really affect much. But you might want to do that if I think that would work well too. You can just turn this blue borderline to a white color. But overall, I think this is a job well done. So let's move on to the next. Now, this dashboard, the person made use of a background. I love the fact that she or he added a um, brand logo. So if you're working for a company and you want to add their logo, this works well, and then you make sure that the logo is not contrasting, is not affecting the colors you're using. So I think that works well. So also you can tell your department by location. Also you can tell your department and the location as well. So for the HR data analysis dashboard of this, Daniel's Desert Limited, we can tell the use of filters here, which I find cool and this is acceptable. So the person decided to go with a different layout, laying out the card visuals on the right hand side. That works as well, but there's just one thing I would like to point out here. The card visuals are of different sizes. So this is a little bit bigger than this. If you can tell, this is a small card visual, this is a bigger card visual. So you might want to go with consistency and use the same size. So basically what I mean is you have to use the same width and the same height for your card visuals. So it doesn't mean that your total number of employees are more relevant than your average salary or anything. So all of them have the same sizes. So you might want to use the same dimensions for it as well. So that works well. So the title here, the average of salary by gender and location. Okay, I think a better descriptive title would have come in handy here. Average salary gotten by gender and based on location should work well as well. I think the colors you chose, you did well. You did well choose these three colors. I think they work well, so you can tell that clearly. Gender distribution, this is it. This is good. This is looking good. Then this also as well, count of rating by gender and ratings. It will be better, count of ratings by gender and ratings. I don't think anyone going through this as a layman will be able to easily understand this. So you might want to try your gender ratings or the ratings by each gender type, just a better descriptive title would work. Also, there's one thing I'll point out, turning off your Y axis label and your X axis label, because why do you turn this off? Because your title will be descriptive enough to anyone that can understand, and these labels are just adding a little cluster to your dashboard. So they I think the best choice to go will be to remove these labels, your gender, your count of rating, your gender and average of salary. Because when you tell average salary gotten by each gender based on location, people will tell that, okay, this is the gender, male and female, this is the average salary gotten, and this is the locations here, which your legend is clearly showing. So I'll just point out that you should just your labels, you should work on your labels, you should work on your card size, and then the when you come over here, I see you chose just the good, average, and the poor ratings. So I think that is a limitation on your analysis. I feel you should show every ratings that count. It's just like you excluding a small size or a large size from your clothing store. I feel you should also include the very good, the good, the average poor. I think you should include that. For me, I removed the not rated because based on I assume the stance that my employee is telling me, we just want to see the ratings. We do not care about people that were not rated. We just want to see the ratings. So I would just like you to include the very good, good, average, and poor, and you should work on this the size of each card visuals being the same. And I think that is good. And you can also try seeing if you can maybe push the color of this using a dark, I don't know if it's a dark gray. I think this is a gray color. Push it a little bit to the background so it doesn't take much relevance. So it's kind of like a dark a dark, not a gray kind of color instead of just a dark black color. So it's just like a gray color. So I'll talk about the I already discussed about your diverging palette. You should start from one color. You can start from blue and diverge to orange, and then the at the center you can have this color. This color I think can work well for a neutral color as well that you use. So that would work well as well, or you can that would work well. So I'm just going to move. So this is like your brand logo here is also like it's cool to have that because you might want to include your company's logo you're working for. So well done on that. Overall, well done on the visual. You did well with the alignment. So just increase the card visuals and take down what I've noted. I think that'll be fine then. So for the next one, we can clearly see the title, and I'm going to see the total number of employees. So I would have wanted you to just maybe make this just on a single line, like total employees, so everything looks clean and simple on just one single line. I think that would work well. So also, I would want this to be aligned with this. I think it would be better if you can align this, maybe stretch this a little bit to the end so it can just align perfectly. I think that would be better. You decided to go for a pie chart. It's just three slices, so which is okay, and that works well. Now I'm going to talk about the placement of your legend. Now, once someone like basically, I think most people read from left to right. So once I start reading, I read your gender distribution. The next thing I see is your chart. So I see 49% for I think I'll call this a blue color for like a blue color, and I see 47% for ash color. But I can't really tell what this means. So I would have preferred this to be maybe at the top or at the side. So it to be the first thing I read. Okay, so anywhere I see blue, I reference it to male. So I can tell that okay, when I'm seeing this 49%, okay, this is male population. So I think that can be added. Then we go to your ratings by gender type. I think you did well with this palette. This is nice diverging palette. Well done. I would like you to increase the size of your data labels. So it's a little bit tiny and not really visible. So you might want to increase that and reduce the decimal place to 0. Try to round it off to 0. So this is just going to be showing you 12%. I think that's better readable and best for readability. Then when you come to your Y values, female, male, and non-binary, they are small and not clearly visible. So you might want to increase that as well. Okay. Then let's move on to the average of salary by gender type. So I think the title needs to be descriptive as well. I think I've said that already on previous dashboards. So that's just what you need to work on. And also your alignment here, I don't think is you align this with this title correctly. Your alignment is something you need to work on a little bit because you can see this is not directly aligned to this. So you need to work on your alignment. This is going to come a little bit downwards. If you try to pull this, it's not clearly aligned well. So think you need to work on that as well. But overall, well done. I love your diverging palette, and it's a cool color. So moving on to the next. So this is a very cool dashboard. I'm not a fan of backgrounds, but when I saw this, I felt Ibiloye did a good job with the background. I felt that was nice as well. And I liked the fact she highlighted all of these, the total number of employees, salary. I think she did a good job. The gender statistics, she was able to show this as well. So she might include this. This can be okay here, but she can decide to include this here. So one thing I noticed about Ibiloye, she made a title descriptive. So gender statistics, I can clearly tell what this chart is about. Average salary by gender, I can tell. Ratings by gender, I understand what she's going to show me based on the title. Even the title of our visuals, this is good. So coming up to the use of line. So if we can see that she made use of a shape here, a line shape here to kind of demarcate. I like that. So be able to just segregate everything. I like that. And the color was the right fit for this. So I'll talk about a palette. I think a palette is okay. A diverging palette is okay. The only thing I think I have a little issue with is the recommendations. So this data set was provided just to perform basic questions, just answer the basic questions. So I don't really feel she highlighted the right recommendations. So I'm just going to read what she wrote. According to the visualizations, it can be observed that the company is not gender biased. So I'm going to base this on the data. So when you come to our data, when you come to your data, you can see that the average salary by gender for non-binary is 79K. For male, it is $75,000. For female, it is $72,000. So you can see the average salary gotten by a female in that company is $3,000 less than the ones gotten by a male. So if you're as a female, you're earning $3,000 less by a male. There is, I think that is talking about the introduction of bias, right? Though this, you can't just base off this recommendation based on the average salary gotten by gender. There could be other factors just like the department. So working in a certain department can affect the average salary you get. There are some departments that pay much more than other departments. So this is why I didn't go ahead to ask you to make recommendations based off on that, because there will be need for much in-depth analysis into the gender pay gap in this data set. So I do not agree with your recommendations. I think it is gender biased, though we could go deep into it to further explore that. So also the ratings. This ratings is just ratings made by basically a manager of the employees to say, okay, this performed very good and good, average poor and very poor. So overall, really, I think you did a very good job. I love the layout. Even the color you used was, this is a very cool visual. So overall, I think you did a good job. So well done. Let me move on to the next. So this is where I talk about colors. So this is what brought me exactly to start discussing colors, because I feel I didn't emphasize that enough. So you could create a very nice chart and your colors would kind of put you at a disadvantage. So using the right colors, I'm going to miss the information here. I'm not going to be able to tell anything at this. I'm not going to be able to tell anything here. So you should focus on just two colors. Two colors would do you well, and shade of it. Also, you can tell here you chose to use this color, and so you could just focus on maybe a blue, a deep blue, and just be consistent with that, and an orange color at the very end. And then you could change this to a deep blue color as well. So you will need to turn off the labels. They are not needed, and you need a better descriptive title. So just note down what I've given for other dashboards as well, and see if your dashboard is fits that as well. So you just need to turn off this. And these colors are too much. If I count already, this is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, let's say 7. So you've used like 7 colors in just this dashboard. Now that is a lot for this. That is a lot. I think that's something we need to work on. So that's why I sent out the book also to go through these books. So now I know you're eager to work on dashboards, and that is the whole process, to practice and learn. But reading a book on the, data visualization, going ahead to read up on the right colors to use, will pay you very well. Once you start posting your dashboards online, people are going to be impressed with your color choice and your analysis as well. So doing the research is going to pay off. So I move on to, I think this is our last visual. I think I'm going to highlight the same thing. This card, this slicer is not, it's cutting off the all. So I think you need to pull it down a little bit. Just pull it down a little bit. And then I'm seeing different shades of color. This is a deep shade of red. This is a different shade of red. I would prefer a more consistent color. You can just go with a red color and then a red color here as well, a bright red color. Also, the size of your card visuals are small, and I think the what can I say, I think the placement of your car visuals should, let's see, you can try a little bit with the alignment as well, aligning this to the end of this, that could work. Gender distribution, I think you need to give your dashboard room to breathe. I think you need to give your dashboard like more space, so you can try enlarging the size of the dashboard, so you can give it a little bit more space. But overall, I like what you did with your diverging palette. I just think you need to make this a little bit more clear. Increase the font size. I can't really see the female. Increase the font size here as well. I can't really see the numbers. These numbers are going to tell me information. And if I can't see the numbers, what can I tell from this? So you want to increase the numbers as well. So I think we've come to the end of the whole visualization talk. So basically, I felt like I needed to talk about this because you're going to work on your own case study as well. And even when we get the analysis right, you want to ensure you pick a good color so people don't come across your dashboard and just skip it because they don't like what they're seeing without even bother to go through the story you're trying to tell. So the right colors is going to help people to first stay fixated on your dashboard, and then they're going to go through the whole analysis you did on it. So, all right, so I'm checking the time now, and we still have time, of course. So basically, this is just to catch up on what you practiced on day 5 of 10 days of Power BI. So you can work. So I'm going to plead with everyone to go ahead and read that book, Storytelling with Data. Even me, I'm still learning, so I still refer back to that book to learn when to use the right chart, to be very sure that I'm using the appropriate chart for a question. So that book is going to come in handy, and you can also go ahead and look for other books online or just search up on good data visualization, the good use of colors, and I think that would come in handy as well. So let's move on to the introduction to DAX. So I'm just going to go back to my slides. Okay, so I think let's just take in all I've been saying about visualization in for like 2 seconds. Let's just take that in. So welcome to day 6 of 10 days of Power BI. So today we are going to delve into introduction to DAX. For today's agenda, we are going to start off with a little introduction to DAX, which we call data analysis expressions. Then we'll discuss what measures and calculated columns are. We're also going to create a measure and we'll create a calculated column. So today's class is going to be a basic intro to DAX. And once we're done with this intro to DAX, because we need this for our guided case study, the case study I'm going to be working on, we're going to need the knowledge of DAX. So I'm trying to prepare you in advance for that because that's going to be a little complicated, not that much. I'll try to break it down, but we need to get the basics first before we move on. So prior to this course, we've started up with getting data, cleaning data, modeling data, creating a simple data visualization, and moving on to introduction to DAX. Once we start the case study, we're going to go over the same processes again. Once we start the case study, it will be starting with getting the data, and we're going to go through the data cleaning together, the data modeling, and every step. So now that that's been said, let's move into introduction to DAX. Now, what exactly is DAX? We've been hearing DAX online, DAX in Power BI, DAX in Power BI, this, DAX everywhere. So DAX is basically data analysis expressions. So first, I'll try to relate it to people that know Excel, people that have a knowledge of Excel. DAX is basically a bit similar to when you write functions for Excel, but that is not it entirely. But you know that you can also, I recently found out that you can also write DAX in Excel as well. There is also DAX in Excel. But basically today we're just talking about DAX in Power BI. So let me not digress. DAX is a combination of functions and operators used to build formulas, create calculated tables, columns, and measures. So what does this mean exactly? Basically, DAX is you writing functions, like let's say we have functions. Let's look at functions. Functions in Python are like piece of reusable code. So function is basically something you use to carry out an act. Let's say you want to add numbers together. You want to add 2 plus 3 plus 4. Instead of you doing 2 plus 3 plus 4, you could just do sum of 2, 3, and 4 in a bracket, and it will add that to you. That's just like a simple explanation of what a sum function can do for you. So basically, DAX combines functions like your sum, your count, your average, and combines it with operators. So operators are basically mathematical operators like your multiplication sign, your which is asterisk, your division sign, which is like a slash. So DAX is a combination of these functions which I've mentioned and the operators, using them to build formulas that used to create calculated tables, columns, and measures. So we're going to head off to Power BI and explain what all what columns, measures mean. Basically, we're not going to discuss calculated tables. In the order of ranking of difficulty, calculated tables, I think, comes first, then measures, then columns or calculated columns. So I've not come in my practice, I've not come into the use of calculated tables. Majorly, we're always creating calculated columns and measures. So today's class will just be on calculated columns and measures. So now we have been talking about calculated columns and measures. So what exactly is a measure? So basically, measures are summarizations of your data or an aggregate calculation of your data. So basically, let's say you want to create a summarization of your data. Basically, when we analyze data, we're trying to summarize data. We're trying to say, what is the total revenue I earned in this month? Sum up the revenue. We're trying to aggregate all those large values you have in a column, sum them up. That is an aggregate. So that is like what measures is. Measures provide you an aggregate calculation of your data in the simplest form possible. Then what about calculated columns? So calculated columns, when we have our data in, when we import in data and we see it in our data table, we see different columns of data, like the way we saw the gender column and the ratings column when we were working. So basically, calculated columns is you now creating a new column that is not part of your data source. So I'm just going to read this here. Calculated columns are new columns of data which are not part of the source. So you brought your data into the Power BI without a specific column, and then you need a column. Let's say your data was brought in with just the unit price of a product. Let's say you're selling, let me just use a simple example. Let's say you have books and you have biros. Those are the product item you're selling, books and biros. And the unit price of book, let's just say it's at 200 naira. Let's just say 200 naira. Unit price of biro, let's say it's 50 naira. So those are the unit price of one item. And a buyer comes to purchase 2 books and 2 biros. So your data comes in that form. You're giving the data containing the product, which is books and biros, in a column. You're giving the unit price of each, which is 250 naira. Then you're giving the amount of items, the quantity, which is 2. Now this data comes into your Power BI like this. And now you want to know what is the amount a customer paid that bought the book. The customer that bought the book, how much did he pay? So you're going to have to do a calculation. You're going to have to create a column to perform this calculation. So this is where calculated column comes into place. You want to calculate the unit price, which is 200 naira for a book, times the total number of items, which is 2. So the 200 times, using an operator, which is the asterisk or the multiplication sign, times 2 is going to give you your 400, which is going to be in a new column, which you just calculated which is not part of your data source, but which is now part of your data source. So initially it was not part, but once you calculated it, it is now part of your data source. So there's a bit of a confusion of like calculated columns and measures, when to use measures, when to use calculated columns, because so let's just talk about the differences first. So the difference between calculated columns and measures. Calculated column is going to create a value for each row in the table. So remember the example I gave you of books and biro, selling a book and selling a biro. So they are basically two rows in your data set, or two entry, an entry for selling book and an entry for biro. So calculated column is going to create a value for that book, which is 200 times 2, which is 400 naira. And it's going to create another value for the second row, which is 50 naira times 2, which is going to be 100 naira. So that is what calculated column will do for you. Now, measures are something that are calculated on demand. Now, calculated columns are going to, I said they're going to create a value for each row in the table, right? So once they create this value, you're going to see this value. These values are physical. You can see it in your data table. You can see it created there already. You can see the values, you can see the numbers. But for measures, you're not going to see these numbers. These numbers are calculated on demand. What do I mean by they are calculated on demand? So basically, when you want to create a measure, you're going to write a DAX function or a DAX formula. So once you write this out, it's going to be saved, but it's not going to calculate. But once you write a DAX formula for a calculated column, it's going to calculate it and it's to show you the table immediately. But for measures, it's not going to happen like that. It's just going to just save it. Then once you want to create a visual or a table or something using that measures, once you bring that measure in and put it in your fields, is now going to calculate it. So this is, you're demanding it now and bringing it into your field pane. This is when it's going to calculate. So I guess this is why I'll move on to the next and explain why the difference, why it kind of like matters in a way. So in the third difference, we say in calculated columns, calculations are done immediately. So immediately you type in the formula, immediately Power BI is going to calculate it, 200 times 2, provide it to you to see, and this is where you see that your data is stored in memory. So now this is where it comes into why people will always tell you that if you can, always go for a measure at first. Because a measure is going to save you space storing your data in the memory. A measure is going to help you optimize your reports. Your reports are not going to take too long to load when you're creating calculated columns. You're adding more columns to your data. You're adding more you're adding more things that your data is going to keep on loading. So once you create a calculated column, every time you close Power BI and open it, Power BI is going to refresh it. It's going to rerun the calculated column. So it's going to be rerunning the multiplication, the formula you have written down. But measures are not going to happen that way. It's only when you decide to bring it in that it's going to happen. So I'm going to go ahead to show you how to create. We're going to go ahead to create a calculated column and a measures, so you understand what exactly I've been saying all this time. But before that, let me just say two things you need to know in DAX. You need to know function and evaluation context. So when I talk about functions, this is what I've been mentioning since. You need to know the functions you use. You need to know, okay, are you using an count? Are you trying to count how many items you have? Are you using a sum function? Are you using an iterator function, which is like a sum x? So an iterator function is basically going to sum up your data for you. I'm going to explain that further on. So let's move on to the evaluation context now. Evaluation context is basically saying, how do you want to evaluate your data? Are you going to go for a measure? Do you need a calculated column in this case, or do you need a measure in this case? Let's head off to Power BI and show you something. So I'm going to be using a new data set for this. So I'm just going to go to Power BI. That's taking a little bit to load. Okay, let's just close this tab. Let's close this. So we're going to wait for Power BI to load and open. Power BI as usual, doing the most, taking time to come on. So I'm just going to close this pop-up, close this as well. So now this is our Power BI interface. So I'm just going to get data. I'm going to get data from an Excel workbook. I can come here or here. So I choose here, import data from an Excel workbook. So I have my others data sets that I want to use to explain that. So I'm just going to click on open. So the navigator window should open now. Okay, so I can see this is my Excel workbook. This is the other sheet. So I can just select on this. I'm going to see a preview of the data set. So this is just a simple data set to illustrate DAX. So you can see the product ID of each product. You can see the unit price and the quantity and discount, of course. So I'm going to select this, and I'm not going to transform data. This is just to show you how to calculate DAX. So I'm just going to go ahead and load the data in. So you're going to get the data set at the end of this, so you can practicalize on this now to create some simple DAX measures. So now the data set is loaded in. I can see this, the table orders, it's in already. I can go to my data view to just see it. So this is the data set now. So we're first going to start off with creating a calculated column. So the first things first is, let's say we have a unit price here and we have the quantity, but we want to get what is the total sales per order ID rather. So we want to get what is the total sales made for this transaction. The transaction with order ID 1058 and then the rest as well. So what is the total sales? So the formula to calculate sales is the unit price multiplied by the quantity. So how do you go about creating a calculated column rather? So there are two ways to do this. Now I feel it's better to do it in this data view so you can see it when we're creating the column and you can see exactly when it loads in. So basically, the two ways to do that, you can come up to your orders table here, drop this down, probably. Let's just drop this down. So on my orders table, I'm just going to right click. Once I do that, I'm going to see new measure and new column. So once I select new column, a new column pops up, and this is where I get to write my DAX function. This is where I get to write the function that I can use to create a new column. So I'm just going to show you I'm just going to close this if I don't want it again. So I can show you how else you can get a calculated column or just a column. So let's go here. So looking at this table, we're still in our data view. You can just come here under your calculations and see a new column. So when you hover around it, you see write a DAX expression that creates a new column for the table and calculate values for each row. So you can come up here and just select this. And it's basically going to do the same thing as just coming here and clicking on to get new measure. But why you'd want to come here to click on here to get the new calculated column is if you have multiple tables, you want to create the calculated column in the right table because Power BI is going to pick the first table by default to create your calculated column. So imagine if I have two tables here. Let's say this is orders, I have sales and something else, and I want to create a calculated column for sales, and I just go here and where I did that here and create a new column. It will be created for this orders table. So I might need to come here to my sales, right click, like come, let's say this is my sales, and right click and do that. So basically what I'm saying is creating a calculated column, you might need to just, the best practice is probably just to right click on the table you want the column in, right click on it and select a new column. So once you do that, now you can decide to give your column a descriptive name. So I'm just going to say total sales. So total sales. So what do I want to calculate? Formula for total sales is the unit price. And here you're going to see something happen now. I'm trying to type in unit price. And this pop-up comes up. Now this is how Power BI works. It takes the table name and then the column. So this is the name of our table, orders. This is data set we entered. If you remember, orders, this is the table. That's why you can see this little table icon here. So this is the table. So it's going to bring, so it references every column with the table name. So anytime I want to multiply unit price times something, it's going to be, say, unit price from orders table, basically. So unit price in orders table. So I'm just going to come ahead and click this. Then I'm going to multiply that with, I want to multiply that with the quantity. So I'm just going to do, I can start typing quantity and Power BI is going to bring that up for me. So I see quantity up, I'll select that as well. Now, once this is done, you'll notice there's always a sign here sometimes. This sign here is going to tell you if your expression or your DAX expression is correct. So if you're seeing this black, you're good to go. But once you start seeing a red color here, you might need to check if maybe you're missing a bracket or something. Let me see if this is going to work. Okay, this is not showing yet. Maybe if I try to click on enter, it would happen. Then no, let me just put that in. Basically, if it's not correct, you're going to be seeing a red, like a red signal, danger, there's probably an error here. So I'm just going to click enter. So once you do it, automatically, like I told you, Power BI is going to calculate this for every row. So for every row, Power BI is calculating this. So Power BI, for every row, Power BI is multiplying the unit price by the quantity to give it total sales of 180. 18 times 3, 54. So Power BI is doing this for every row. So this is what calculated column is going to do. It's going to show you this in a physical form in the table. So this is it. This table did not come with our data set, but here we can see it clearly now in our data set. So I'm going to show you how can we try, okay, can we create this with a measure? Now this is a calculated column we just did here. Is it possible to recreate this with a measure instead? So we are going to try that now. So I'm just going to come over here. So the same step you go to create a calculated column is the same step you take to create a calculated measure. So you come to the table, you're going to select it, right click, and then you select your new measure. So once you do that, you're going to see measure. Now you can always rename this as well. So I'm just going to call this, since I called the other one total sales, I'll just call this, let's say, total sales, just to change it a little bit. Okay, let's start off with, I don't want to start off with this now. I just realized I want to take it through a process of step by step. So instead of recreating this total sales with a measure, I would first show you something first with creating a measure, just a simple measure first before I do that. So let's just backtrack a little bit. Instead of total sales, let's perform a measure. So I can use a measure to get the total, let's say, I can use a measure to get the total quantity of items ordered. So I'm just going to see, or the total number of transactions, total number of transactions. I can use a measure to get the total number of transactions. So basically, that's what I want to get, because the total number of transactions is an important metric. You want to know the amount of transactions you had in a month, the amount of people coming in to buy your items. So let's create a measure for that. So to get the total sum of transactions, you're going to need to use your count. So basically what you're going to be doing is, let's see, let me just call this like transactions. And then I'm going to use count. So this count. Now, for measures, you are always going to use aggregate functions. What do I mean? You are always going to use maybe a count, a sum, a max, a mean, or I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but you're going to need an aggregate function like a count, a sum, an average. But for calculated columns, you don't necessarily need an aggregate function most of the time. Like you can see, we created a simple calculated column and we did not make use of an aggregate function. We only used an operator, which is just the asterisk. So moving back here, this is a measure, so I have to start off with an aggregate function, which is count. So I want to count. So count is telling me count the numbers in the column. So I'm going to count my orders ID. This orders ID is a unique entry. So for each order you make, you have a unique order ID. So I'm just going to count this, and then I'm going to close this. I'm going to hit enter. So let's go to our view and show what we get. Let's go to our view, and I'm going to create a card visual. I'm going to make this clearer. So this is our card visual. So I'm just going to take my transactions here and place it on the field pane. So Power BI is going to calculate that. So based on this count orders, I get my total transactions to be 2,155 transactions rather. So I can come here to give this a comma. This is supposed to work. So you can see 2,155, just a comma here. So let's say I want to get, let me come up here. Let's go back to our data view now. Let's say I want to get the total quantity of products that people bought in my store. Let's say I want to get the total quantity of products. How many quantities of products did we sell this month? Let's say it's a month's data. So I'm just going to come up here to my orders table as well. And I'm going to create a new measure. I want to get the total quantity of products. So what is this telling me? I want to sum them up. I want to know the sum of it. So I'm going to be using a sum here. I have 10, 3. I want to get the total of this column. How many quantity of products? So I'm going to call it, let's say this is the total, let me just say total units sold. So I'm going to use what? I'm going to use sum. Sum of what? I want the sum of the quantity, which is in the orders table. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to close the bracket. I'm going to hit enter. So you see, this is a measure that I'm creating. So I'm not seeing anything in this table. So I can only test it out here, creating a visual to show. You can create a table visual, you can create a card visual, or any visual to show you what you have. So I'll create another card visual here. Let me see if I can fit to, okay, this is not zoom in, actual size. This is the clear. I think this is the most clear it can be. This is actually, I've actually zoomed in, guys. I'm trying to zoom in. This is, so basically what I want to do is, let me just delete this and create another chart. So I calculated what? I calculated the total units sold using a measure. So I summed it up. I used the sum function. So I'm going to carry the total units sold and place it in my fields. So you can see that the total units sold for this data set is 51,000. So our products sold in the month, we sold about 51,000 products. So I wanted to introduce you to first the basic measures such as the count and the sum to start out with. So today's class is just an intro to this. Um, when we want to create further functions, we're going to use the case study because we're going to be creating DAX measures with the case study. So let's go back to the data table. So I've always been trying to say it's always best to go with a measure than a calculated column. Like, just before you think about it, think, okay, can a measure serve me? Can I create a measure? If I can create a measure, then that's fine, I'll use a measure. Why should you do that? Because of the physical space that a calculated column is going to take up. So since I've been saying that now, we calculated this total sales using a calculated column. Can we create this with a measure? Yes, so this is what I said. I was going to show you simple measures and then I'll show you how to also create this using a measures. I mean, how to create, like, this is showing you the total sales now. So let's say, let me show you the total sales here. Let me show you what I mean now. So with this calculated column we have done, I can drag this here and you can see that the total sales is 1.35, rather 1.35 million. Now let me replicate this with a measure. So I'm going to come here. So if you notice one thing about our measure has been doing here, this sum function, basically what this sum function has been doing is it has been summing in just the column I'm referring to. So I'm referring to quantity, so it's adding everything up in this quantity. Now I'm going to introduce you to a different sum function which we call sum x. So sum x is going to provide you and it's like an iterator function. So it's going to provide you with more capabilities than sum. So sum x can actually sum. Let me just show you that. I don't think I can get the right word. Okay, I don't need to remove this. I just need to create another measure. So let me just show you what I mean with sum x first. Going to others table, I'm going to create a new measure. So this measure is what I'm going to use to calculate a new total sales. I'll change the name since we already have a total sales with this. So now I want to use a measure to calculate the total sales I got in my company. So I'm going to use a sum x and I'll tell you why. So basically a sum x to start off with a table. So it's to reference the table that you want to perform an expression on or a calculation on. So the table we are performing this calculation or expression on is what? The others table. This is the only table I have here. So I'm just going to type in the others. So you see Power BI bringing you this to help you out with writing. It's almost like Excel, which is just showing you like, okay, sum table. So you've entered the table name now. You actually have to enter your expression. Now, what do I want to sum in this table? What do I want to do now? I want to get my total sales. So how can I get that? I can only get that by multiplying my unit price, which I'm going to write unit price. So I'm going to see the others table. I'll calculate unit price multiplied by this is the asterisk is multiplied by what? So multiplied by my quantity. So I see this come up, I'll just select it. And then I'm going to close this. So sum function will only sum up everything in one row, but SumX provides you the ability to iterate over each row. So it's going to perform, okay, look, if I was going to use a sum function, what a sum function would do for me would basically just add up all the unit price, add up all the quantity, and then multiply them together. And that is not what I want. That is not the right calculation for the total sales. Adding up all the unit price and multiplying it with all the quantity, that's not the right calculation for sales. Sales is each unit price of the product times the quantity of that product. So that doesn't work. So now, what does SumX do now? SumX is going to refer to each row. So it's going to perform this unit price times quantity I've written here. It's going to do this 18 times 10, 180. And then it's going to keep iterating. It's going to keep repeating it 18 times 3 for the second row, 18 times 50. It's going to keep this process, and it's going to sum up everything up. So I'm just going to click on enter. So when I click on enter, I notice that I have a new measure here as well. So you see your measures, it kind of looks like a calculator in front, no, maybe not a calculator, but it looks like a calculator to me. So I'm going to show you. So this is my total sales using my calculated column. So I'm going to create another copy of this country C. Let me just do country C. I'm going to remove this. So this is my total sales based on using calculated column. Now, my total sales using a measure would give me, I'm just going to come to, this is the measure I created, tot sales, which is total sales. I'll drag and drop, and I get the same answer. So a measure that I used provided me with the same, and I can still decide to apply basic filters as well on the measure and the calculated column. What I mean basic filter, like let's say I just want to see the total sales for only, I'm going to drag this quantity here and place it here, quantity, place it here. So let me show you first why I'm doing this. This is my filter pane. Let's say I want to filter this total sales now to just a particular quantity of items. I'm just going to drag this and drop here, and I'm going to select basic filtering, and I can filter just one product items that were sold, that were just one quantity. So I'm going to get this. So what I'm basically trying to show you is that you can filter for both this and this, for both your calculated column and your measures. You can filter the total sales. Let's say if it was a data set that had gender, like male and female, and you want to get the total sales for a female population, you can filter for that. So I don't know if this is explanatory enough. Like, this is what I'm saying, SumX is going to perform and iterate all of this. So I don't know if I'm going to, should I go over this again? Should I go over creating the first measure, or should I take questions now? Okay, I see one question here. Is SumX here similar to some product function in Excel? I can't really tell. I can't really tell, but I'm going to go ahead and research that and get back to you. I can't really remember this, so I'll get back to you on that. I'm going to answer that question in the group chat or on our next session, similarly. So then let's go off to the next question. Is there a possibility we get a Word file containing the DAX measures formulas we are currently studying? So I don't know if I can create a Word file really, but I can send you the link to the DAX documentation, like the Microsoft Learn, they have exact measures, just like the way you learn code in Python. So you can be able to get an explanation of what each DAX function does, and also you can be able to see an example of it. They are going to explain it there with examples as well to help you. So a word function, a word file with DAX measures, I'll consider that if I can create one, with the time I have, I'll consider that. But I'm not promising anything, but I'll send the link to the Microsoft site where you can get the DAX documentation as well. So I see a question again here. What's the difference between new measures and new column? So that's what I explained earlier in the slides. I'll just go by it again. The difference between new measures and new columns are a physical part of your data set. So once you create a new column, it's going to show here in your data set. But once you create a measure, it's not going to be a part of your physical data set. Also, a column is going to take up space, and it might cause your report to take a while to load when you close Power BI and when you open Power BI once again. But a measure is not going to do that. Measures are only calculated calculated on demand. What I mean by demand is, so this measures total sales here now. This is when I brought it in from here, this is when it's calculated. So it's not going to it's not going to take up much space because it's not being, every time you refresh, it's not refreshing. It's just basically this column you added here that is going to be doing that refreshing. So that's the difference between your columns or calculated columns and your measures. So I'm going to go over, I think someone said I should go over creating the calculated columns again. So I'm just going to show you what I did. So I'm going to create a new calculated column with new total sales as the name because I already have a total sales. So let me just come here and delete. So you can also delete these calculated columns from your data. Let's say you ended up creating something you didn't need, you can also delete them. You just come over here, you right click and you select delete from model. So let me just delete this and recreate it. That's what I'll just do. Okay, so before I go ahead and repeat the process of creating a new calculated column, I would just like to answer a question from the chat box. So I see the question: how can we edit a measure since it won't show on our data set, or we just have to delete and rewrite the code? Now, you can edit a measure by editing the code. So I'll show that real quick. So let's go to the measure we created. We created a measure for total sales. So once I go to total sales, you see my measure here. So if I made a mistake, I can come here and edit it. Just like what I'm doing now, I'm still typing on the measure. So let me just go back here again. Let me go back to, let me show you what I mean again. So this is showing here because I've deleted the calculated column. So this is why there's no column to refer to anymore. So let's go back here. So let me just show you what I mean. So I'm going to select the measure that I create, tot sales, which is total sales. So selecting this measure here, I'm just going to click on it. Then the formula is going to come up. So basically you can change it. You don't need to delete it. You can only delete it permanently if you don't need it. But if you want to edit it, if you feel like you made a mistake there and that's why it's not working or something, you can edit it. So you only just delete it. You don't have to delete it and You can delete it and recreate another one if you want, but you can also just come here and make amends here. So that works fine. So now I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I created the calculated column real quick, and then I'll show you the measure again real quick. So for the calculated column, I right clicked on the others table, select new column, decide to rename your column to total sales. What is the formula you want to write? The formula you want to calculate total sales is what? Unit price. So it's going to come up and you see Power BI references it to the table. So I want to multiply that by the quantity. Then once I'm done, I'm just going to hit enter and it's going to load, and then I'm going to see it appear on this table. So it's as simple as that. But as you move further, you're going to see how DAX comes into place. But hopefully it's not be confusing. Hopefully it's not be too confusing, because so let's go to the new measure. Let's create a new measure now. I'm just going to come here and delete this total sales so I can create the measure. I'll show you how I created the measure. So I'm just going to come here and delete it from model. So right click, how do you create a new measure? Go to your others table, right click, select new measure. So you go to the table you want to create the measure in, then rename your measure. Let's call it same name, hot sales. Then let's calculate. So what do we want to do? We want to be able to get the total sales. So we want to multiply the unit price and the quantity, and we want to get the total sales. So we are summing values from both columns. So we're going to use our sum x function. Sum x function requires what? A table name. Our table name is what? Others. And then an expression to perform. The expression we want to perform is what? The product of the unit price and the quantity. So I'm going to end it off with, I'll end it off with a bracket. So I'm going to click on enter. So the total sales is created here. I can see it here. So I'm just going to fix this. Total sales, fix this, the total sales. So one of the function is going to save you a lot of space and demand, which is the creating it using a measure. But then you have to use a function, an aggregator function, which is the sum x. So that is the time you get to understand it. That isn't that scary. Just you can see we have already written like our first few DAX functions to give us the total sales, so we can get the total sales, we can get the total quantity of products sold, we can get all this using DAX. Now I know you can say, but we can also get all of this from just this simple. Let me just bring a card visual here now. Let me bring a new card visual, or let me use this one as an example. Let me just use this one since it's bold enough and you can see it. So I'm just going to remove this and use this to explain what I mean. So let's see. I counted the total quantity of products, so using a measure count earlier. So what if I do not use a measure? So let me just bring this here and drop it here. Quantity, come and drop. So you can see that calculator as well, and this is without a measure. So let me show you the measure I created for that using this. I'm going to remove this. The measure I created for that was what, if you remember, was the total units sold, 51K. So I created a measure that could calculate this, which simple dragging this year can perform as well. So you might be, oh, so I don't necessarily need to perform a, I don't necessarily need to go ahead and learn this. But once you start the case study tomorrow, where you have more than one table, where you are referencing another table using like almost like lookup in Excel, you're going to see that you need the knowledge of DAX. So the knowledge of DAX here might, this is just to, I just decided to use the simple data set to introduce it. So tomorrow we're going to start off with understanding our case study, and maybe I'm going to take some questions on anything we've taught previously. But since we're going to be going over everything from the basic tomorrow, from the whole beginning process, from getting your data in and cleaning it, we'll do everything. I don't know if we're going to complete it in a day, but wherever we stop, we'll pick up from the next day. So this is all I have for that. So today, this is just an intro. So also, as regards the data sets, I'm going to share it in the group. So the functions we create today were, we created count. So I'm going to tell you what. So let me show you a little bit. So we created this, a measure to calculate the total sales. That is one thing we did. We created a, let me show you, we created a calculated column based off on this formula. So that is number 2 of what we did today. We created a calculated column. We created this, so this is the calculated column. This is the formula I used, and we created a measure here to perform the same. Now, we also created a measure here to calculate the total quantity of products. And we calculated a measure to get the total number of transactions performed. So how many transactions did you make in that month? How many times people come in to make a transaction in your business? We calculated that using count. So every transaction is recorded with a unique order ID. So we counted the order ID. So basically what we did is we created four we wrote 4 DAX functions today. So we did for a calculated measure, calculated column rather. We did 3 measures. We did count, sum x, and just a simple calculated column. So I'm going to check the chat box if there are any questions, and if there are none, we're just going to end the class here for today and take a while to take everything in, from the visualizations to the DAX which we learned today. So I'm just going to check if there are any questions. I just see one little question here. How do we filter for a calculated column? So you filter for a calculated column the same way you filter for a measure. So it's the same way I explained earlier. I'll show that real quick. You go to Power BI. This is not your measure. This is the measure here. So the total units sold. You filter based on, let's say we're filtering based on discounts. You drag and drop your discount here. So you bring it to your filter pane, filter type. Let's say we want a basic filtering. Just want to filter to just show, okay, this is not intuitive. But let's do order ID. Let's say we have a particular order ID that, okay, drag and drop. So you can come to basic filtering and filter for order ID 10248. So the client or the customer with order ID 10248 purchased 27 units of products. If we had a customer name in our data set, we can filter for customer name as well. So let's say we have a customer that we think is frequent. We can filter to see, okay, how many units the customer has bought from our store. So I'm removing the filter. So basically that's all for today. And so that's all for today. I'll share the data set and the link to the Microsoft platform where you can learn a little bit about the DAX. Okay, so I think Tina has a little thing to share here, so I'll just let her add that.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We're really glad to see that everyone tried their hands. Like a couple of persons actually tried working on um, the visualization that was taught at the last class, and we're actually really impressed. And I take it that for most of you, that's like a first dashboard for you, and you guys did really great. But I just want to put something out there that, in as much as we want to put out something beautiful, or you want to show that, oh, you're a great designer, you have to have it at the back of your mind that you're not a designer, but you're a data analyst. The end point is to analyze your data and generate insights from it. It's not about designing a dashboard or putting out something that somebody says, oh, it's beautiful. It's about what something can see and be like, okay, yes, this is what I can pinpoint from your analysis. So we really need to put that at the back of your mind. So data analysis, or being a data analyst, is not about the visualization, it's about the analysis. Yes, you need to be able to you need to be able to um, align your charts properly, or say design your charts properly. But if you don't learn the basics, if you don't know how to use your color right, or how to align, you will get everything wrong. So we should also learn to focus on the analysis than on trying to put out something that is very colorful out there. Like, no, just as Nonso said, play it safe. As a beginner, I would advise, if you are starting out building a dashboard, you can stick with just neutral colors, say a white background. And also, there are lots of data sets online. If you want to practice, you can always, it's good to recreate. I did a lot of recreation when I was starting out, so it's good to recreate. You can see something out there that somebody did and try to just recreate. You learn by actually practicing. That's the best way to actually learn. But thank you guys for being a part of the 10 days of Power BI. You guys have actually, as in, I'm impressed with how you guys have taken the class. I can see people even answering other students in the live chat and all of that, and it's really, really so beautiful to see. Your tweets as well, they really warmed our hearts, like seeing that people are actually taking this very serious, even though it's a free class. We are actually really grateful that you guys are a part of it. So, like she said, she'll be sharing the slides and the data sets for today with you. But don't forget to tweet about what you've learned in the past couple of days. We are gradually getting to the end of this. We're going to start the case study tomorrow, which is like a guided project. So she's going to explain how to work on a data set, then work on a project, or she's giving you a case study rather. She's working on a case study with you guys. So be very, very, very prepared for that, because I'm assuring you guys it's going to be really fun. So that's all from my end. I hope to see you guys tomorrow. Good night, everyone.
All right, thank you, Tina. Thank you. So just to add to, before we end off, I'm just going to answer just a quick question I saw here, real quick. So the question goes, would you recommend using Power BI to analyze more than one data sheet at a time? E.g., the company has sites and therefore send sheets of data. So that is why we discuss data modeling. So data modeling is used to connect different data sets together, like different data tables or data sheets. So tomorrow, the case study we are working on should include 4 data sets. So I think that should give you a view on how Power BI can work with 4 data sheets or data sets. Also, I saw a question of converting from PDF to JPEG. So to convert from PDF, so you can easily convert from PDF to JPEG by going to this site. Just search online. I love pdfdrive.com. So that is the name of the website. So once you search, the website is going to pop up, and you can put in the your PDF of your report, and it's going to convert it to a clean JPEG format for you to post online. So I think that's all that we said. So just try to practice with this data set. We're going to send it off. And then tomorrow we'll start discussing about our case study from the top. So thank you very much for being a part of this session, and thank you for working on the visualizations. So that's the end. Thank you. Thank you. And good night. I hope everyone has a lovely night. Good night or good day, good afternoon, wherever you're joining it from.